Okay, we will get started. Super. Well, it is a huge honour to welcome you to the Leeds Beckett Obesity Institute's World Obesity Day webinar on the voice of lived experience. This is an area we are hugely passionate about at the Obesity Institute, where the voice of lived experience really does underpin absolutely everything we do. We feel that working together is critical in making a real and tangible difference to the lives of people affected by obesity. I'm therefore absolutely delighted to welcome our speakers today, who will be providing some fantastic short examples of why the voice of lived experience is so pivotal to addressing obesity together. Each of our speakers will be providing a very short presentation before they are joined by our wonderful lived experience panelist for a Q&A session at the end. We would therefore ask you that you could pop any questions that you might have either for the speakers or for our panelists into Slido. I think Sunny is going to pop a link to Slido in the chat throughout the presentations, and we can then address all of those questions together in the Q&A. So let's get started. It gives me the greatest of pleasure to introduce our first speaker and our very own fantastic lived experience lead, Ken Clare. So over to you, Ken.
Thank you very much, Louise, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you're watching this. And I'm very blessed to have a great job in one of the best places with the greatest team I've ever worked with. And I'm really glad to have a chance to talk to you this morning about something that's very close to my heart and I'm very passionate about. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk about patient and public involvement and engagement. And this is something that's been around for several years, but really in the last 2, 3, 4 years has taken off. And here at Leeds Beckett Obesity Institute, we've been at the vanguard of that. This is about research being carried out with or by members of the public, or sometimes being led by them, as we'll hear later, rather than to or about them. It's about creating what is truly a person-centered approach, and we should put people at the heart of everything we do. Co-developing, which is a word that some people struggle with, it just means creating something with the people that you're going to be working with. Initially, I thought this was all about research, but we've gone on to prove in the last year that this can be about service delivery, about service evaluation, and about planning future services. And the great thing is, this is work for the people that most need them. Next slide, please. If you involve service users, I would argue that it brings a great, new, different, and fresh perspective to everything that you do. You'll look at things from a different viewpoint. It will improve the quality of the service you're delivering or the research that you're doing, and it will also help, and this has been proven time and time again, in securing funding. If you have good PPI element to a funding bid, that will make a real difference. And the great thing is, it makes the research or the service more relevant to the people that are living with it. Next slide, please. Over the last 3 years, where I've been working in Leeds Beckett, I've been fortunate to take part in several PPI groups, and I think it is some of the positives that I want to tell you about. We've just had a group that's coming towards the end of its sort of one phase of its lifespan. It's lasted 3.5 years, and we're going to hear something more about that from Abby later. It's about a long-term, mutually respectful relationship. And one of the things about that has kept that group going is about good communication. Remuneration is important. For many years, and people on this call today, have been sat round tables discussing things, and they've been the only member of the team around the table that wasn't being paid for the time. And now we've got good guidelines about what people should be remunerated. And that's an important thing to get right. I think it's really important to encourage diversity. For far too long, there was only very small groups of PPIE, and some areas and a specific team that I use for every project. And I'll talk to you later on. I'm doing 2 talks today. I'm sorry about that. I hope you don't get sick of my voice. But we've now got a large, deep bench of people you can choose from. It's important to train everyone. So it's important to train the people who are taking part as PPIE members. And surprisingly, you may find it's important to train the people who are working with them, the researchers, the people working in services, because it's a skill. Working with members of the public doesn't come easy for everyone. And sometimes you have to learn a new language that isn't your scientific academic language, but is about translating what you do into terms that people like I can understand. And we all need to evaluate what we're doing and to learn and move forward. Next slide, please. Avoid some pitfalls. Don't be tokenistic. I was once rang up closer to 1 on a Friday afternoon and asked would it be a co-applicant on a PPIE grant that was closing at 5 o'clock that afternoon. It surprised the person that I said no, but I think it's really important that we're not just there to make the numbers up or to tick a box. Please don't neglect payment. Payment you'll see several times mentioned in my presentation, but it is so important that it's a way of valuing people. And sometimes for some people it goes beyond cash. It's about valuing their time and valuing their input. Please always allow presentation time. We can't all assimilate 100-page documents in an hour, and you may need to help people to get through things. Meet on our terms, and that can be about the places. Don't take us to universities or hospitals. Come and meet us in our settings at our hours. And don't always use the same familiar faces. Next slide, please. Just a couple of things that aren't so good. These pictures are from Liverpool Medical Institute, and it's a Victorian, well, it's actually the building's older than that, but this is a Victorian lecture theatre. And this is the most intimidating venue I've ever been in. And I stand on the theatre, little old me, and this all triggers my imposter syndrome. These are guys who develop circulation and public health in Liverpool. I feel like a big hand's going to come down and take me out and say, you don't belong. Avoid business talk. Don't use big words. Create a culture in which people feel able to ask and challenge. Don't get stuck on slow payment. It can be done, and I can point you to people who are doing that well. And don't allow people to feel used. And I'm going to end it there, and I'm going to pass on to the next speaker, I think. Next slide, and just see what happens. So now I'm going to pass it over, and I think Kath is coming next after me. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ken. And I think that's brilliant because as you were going through that presentation, I was checking off in my head that we were doing these things because I've had the privilege of working with Ken throughout Remission and at Abbey and others, and hopefully the learning that we've had through that project we're going to bring into this next one I'm going to talk about. So I'm Catherine Homer. I'm an Associate Professor of Obesity and Public Health at Sheffield Hallam University. I'm just going to share a few slides around a new project that's literally just started. We termed it Enhance, so evaluating the NHS England complications of excess weight clinics for children and young people. Within the project, we're working with the universities that you can see on there and a couple of hospital trusts, but I'm sure that the logos and badges that we have in terms of stakeholders will grow as the project goes on. So next slide, please. So why is the study needed? There are 21, currently I think it's going up to about 29 or 30 complications of excess weight clinics delivered in hospital trusts across England. And these are there to support children and young people aged 2 to 17 years that have got different complications. And these could be things like breathing, low self-esteem, type 2 diabetes, various different complications. They're all linked through the hospitals. And we're not sure what's working with these clinics at the moment. They're all different. They're all delivered differently in the different sites. Some through hub and spoke models and different approaches. And we want to understand what's working and how these can be delivered in the future. Next slide, please. So in terms of our approach to PPI in this, we're taking a few different approaches with it in terms of the level of engagement that we have with children and young people. We had a core group that were involved with us at bid development stage. They were down as co-collaborators, and they're children and young people that have been through a tier 3 equivalent service within South Yorkshire, and they're there. We've talked to them about how to recruit people, we spoke to them about how to design the study, whether it's of value, and they inform the development. We're now working with this group of young people in a core group, and I'll go on to talk to you about who they are in a moment. But they're a core group that will be like our friends going through. So this group will attend meetings with us, they're informing the brand, the development, hopefully featuring on some films, and hopefully will stay with us as we're going through. We want to widen that because that network will be quite local. We want to widen that network as well to include representation from all the Q clinics across England. And that'll be more of an email, lighter touch, if you like, advisory consultancy type role. All this will feed into work package 3, which is focusing on children and young people and families' experience of the services, and that will widen to the full research team. So we've just kind of got this embedded model, but very clear that PPI is at the centre of that model. Next slide, please. So we had our first session since the project started a couple of weeks ago, where we talked about different learning styles, different approaches. These you can see some of the young people that are on there. This is the poster that they've designed for us to try and recruit. So this is to try and widen recruitment out so we can work with children and young people from Bristol and Leeds as well as South Yorkshire. We asked them what they wanted to be called, and they came up with youth and community wellbeing researchers. Just to make sure that research, because they might come and join interviews with us, they'll help us with recruitment, so their role is a researcher. We're also hopeful then they can use that title to put on their CVs as they get older to apply for college or other jobs, so it'll have some other value for them as individuals to grow and develop. So we're wanting to widen it out to Leeds and Bristol. We've got another session coming up this weekend to talk to them about how we do that. Next slide, please. Within the development of this work, so the PPI bit is being led by Kath Sharman. So any of you that know Kath has worked in Shine for a number of years and just amazes us every time we have any sessions or work or any kind of communication with Kath. And Kath asked the young people to kind of ask why they wanted to be involved in this. So we wanted to put this at the centre of the recruitment poster as well, to make sure the young people can look at it and say, well, they're like me, I can be involved in this too. This is what I'll have the opportunity for. So that's embedded within it throughout. Next slide, please. So far we've done the poster. We've started our next challenge this weekend is to start looking at brands and design and what words and things we want to use when we're recruiting children and young people. They've started to share these images with us about what they like to see and what they don't like to see. And the words and that they like and they don't like, and we're working with a design company that will be able to use this and start to develop the kind of creative journey that we've got that will underpin the study. Next slide, please. And in terms of what next, I've mentioned recruiting more families from Leeds and Bristol, and we want to work with young people to develop the study materials, so the recruitment films and the information sheets, inform the questionnaires and the surveys in the interview schedules. We're hoping, we're really hoping that we can host a residential stay, and that residential stay will include the children and families from the 3 areas that I've mentioned, but also the research team, because we want all the research team to understand the experiences and the voice of young people, and to make it kind of hopefully a fun weekend where the researchers, the clinicians and the young people all come together, have lots of fun, but have kind of this shared value of the study and have this shared value of the voice of young people within the study. And then hopefully we can widen it out to include representation from other areas across England. And I think that's my final slide for me. Thank you.
Tamara, would you like to come through?
Apologies, I was just trying to unmute myself. Thank you. Thanks. So thanks, Kath, that was fantastic. So I'll just start off. I'm going to talk to you about one of the projects that Ken referred to earlier. So I'm Tamara Brown, I'm a reader of obesity. I'm also theme lead for tackling inequalities within the Obesity Institute. And I'm really delighted to be able to quickly showcase this project because it has become very close to my heart. This project is funded by the National Institute for Health and Care Research. And it's rather unique in that it is led by Obesity UK with support from Leeds, Beckett and various other stakeholders. Next slide, please, Suneet. Thanks. So in a nutshell, what we want to do is to understand whether people who currently don't access Obesity UK support groups would want a peer support group and whether they and want one that's tailored to their needs. So for this initial project, we're focusing on two underserved populations living with obesity. Women who are Muslim, South Asian, and people from the LGBT community. So we're not quite 1 year into the 18-month project. And the aim of the project is to pilot some peer-led support groups in these communities and to start to co-produce new research going forwards about issues that are important to people from these communities living with obesity. Next slide, please, Suneet. So what we're basically doing at the moment is learning what those barriers and facilitators are, right through from recruitment to running workshops, to running the peer-led support groups, through to evaluation, and then through to shared learning, and what is needed to make these peer support groups sustainable and potentially rolled out across different communities across the UK. Next slide, please, Suneet. So we will do this obviously by listening and engaging with local communities, but and we have various stakeholders. So far, we have undertaken a review of the evidence around support groups with these communities that have focused on well-being. We've talked to community organisations that run these groups. We've run workshops with both communities. We've piloted the support group for South Asian women, and we have a live survey out at the moment to capture the views of people from the LGBT community. Next slide, please. So we have various people involved in this project. We have community co-investigators, community facilitators, key people at community setting, Leeds Beckett, University of Bradford, NHS and local authority partners. But I can't stress how much, right from the funding application, this is underpinned by PPIE. Next slide, please. So this is quite a busy slide about anticipated impact and shared learning. I think really to say the key message is this is thinking about new ways of working and sharing learning, which is always underpinned by PPIE. Next slide, please. So I just want to focus now on the early findings from the support group with the South Asian Muslim women, and then I'll go on to talk about early findings from the LGBT workshops. So these are key issues that have arisen through these support groups that the facilitators and the women attending the groups have discussed. And it's interesting to note that the focus is not on weight or obesity. It's around lots of other issues, including bereavement and loss, and comfort eating in relation to trauma and abuse, relationship difficulties, managing anxiety. Menopause has been discussed. It's something that many of the women in the groups are not aware of in terms of exactly what it involves and the impact it can have on our weight and our mental and emotional health. Conversation around accessing mental health support within the South Asian community has been discussed at length, and the challenges faced when dealing with healthcare professionals who can be dismissive of their symptoms or illnesses and don't refer them on to healthcare professionals that would probably be better suited to meeting their needs. And this puts them off pursuing further help and support. Next slide, please, Sunit. Thank you. So these are early findings that came out of the LGBT workshops, and we've gone on to develop a survey and hopefully, well, there'll be much more learning from that as well. So I guess key learning points at the moment, and hopefully we can discuss some of these in the Q&A going forward, is the differences within the LGBT community around acceptability and use of language and the impact of societal judgment and negative connotations around some words such as queer and fat. There's differences in body image and living with obesity between butch and femme identities. And the very word obesity can make people disengage. It feels like a very medicalized word. And also this the intersection or how things link. So issues around culture and around gender and about living with a larger body weight, you know, all these things are quite difficult to unpick, and of course all this impact on mental health. Binge eating and emotional eating has been discussed. The importance of being able to be confident and accept yourself and your image, it's very important. It's also and there was some discussion around perhaps not being as challenged about living in a bigger body within the LGBT community as outside of that community, with perhaps more champions of plus side within the community. And as I said before, it's difficult to disentangle all these different elements. But I hope that, sorry, next slide, please. So I hope that I've highlighted that each of these communities has very different and specific needs, but there are also some important commonalities which I'd like to, this is my final slide I'd like to end on, please. Both communities highlighted the need for a safe space, which is free from stigma, and how important the use of language is in communicating. And I will stop there and hand over. Thank you.
Thanks, Tamara, and good morning, everyone. Today, I'll be giving a brief overview of our project, which is using co-production to adapt an Australian intervention for addictive eating to UK-based young adults. Have the next slide, please, Suni. So researchers in Australia have recently developed and trialled a successful intervention to reduce addictive eating. The intervention includes 5 sessions over 3 months, which are delivered one-to-one with a client using video conferencing software. The aim of the intervention is to enhance participants' awareness of their relationship with food and trains them in using personalised coping strategies to manage their eating triggers and urges. And these strategies are tailored to their dominant personality traits. Can I have the next slide, please? So the aim of our project is to adapt this intervention to UK-based young adults combining theory and co-production methods. But first, what do we actually mean when we say co-production? So this has been defined by the Social Care Institute for Excellence as when an individual influences the support and services received, or when groups of people get together to influence the way that services are designed, commissioned, and delivered. And it has also been defined by NHS England as a way of working that involves people who use health and care services, carers and communities in equal partnership, and which engages groups of people at the earliest stages of service design, development, and evaluation. Next slide, please. So our project is still in its early stages, but so far we have recruited a diverse group of young women, and we've done that through using Obesity Voices and also our engagement with our previous PPIE groups from other research projects. So I just wanted to note there some of the challenges that we've had in engaging young men in research, and some of the advice that I've received on people who are experienced in working with young men is that we should recruit those young men separately because they can be put off joining groups. So our aim is to conduct our PPIE with young men separate to the PPIE that we're doing with young women. So as well, I've visited colleagues in Australia and received training in intervention delivery. And we've held 2 co-production meetings so far with our group of young women. So the first was just an introduction, an icebreaker. So it's an opportunity for everyone to get to know each other. And then the second, we discussed a component of the intervention that we weren't too sure about whether we needed to retain or not, which was the personality tailoring. And we've also reviewed some of the workbook materials with the participants as well. Have the next slide, please. So through the 2 co-production meetings so far, we have found that the group do relate to the term addictive eating and find this an acceptable term to describe their eating behaviours. They've also advised that the intervention should not be weight related. So the aim should not be to lose weight, but it should be for people to improve their relationship with food, and that by actually having the intervention be weight related, it could be harmful to them. They've also advised on retaining that personality tailoring component that we weren't sure was useful or acceptable. And they've said that they feel like having strategies that are tailored to their personality actually reduces that internalized stigma and provides a starting point with the coping strategies. And then finally, as well, they advised on how important it is to actually deliver the personality feedback. So it's really important that labeling is avoided and it's delivered in a very person-centered way. So this would be very essential in terms of training the people who are delivering this intervention. Next slide, please. So moving forward, the aim of our forthcoming meetings are to continue to co-produce the intervention by exploring if it is acceptable or useful to assess and provide feedback on diet quality. So this is something that has been done in the intervention that's been developed in Australia using the Australian Eating Survey. So we want to understand if that's actually useful or acceptable to participants, and if so, what tool we could actually use that is UK based to inform that. We also want to explore the, and decide on the content of goals. So for example, in Australia, some of their co-production work with young adults has found that they're quite keen to include some physical activity goals alongside the eating behaviour goals. So we want to explore that with our UK-based young adults. And then we also want to review the inclusion of some further intervention components and the session duration and frequency. And then building on that as well, we also want to ensure that the research is co-produced with our co-production group. So this means that we can decide actually what questions are important to people with a lived experience of addictive eating. What do they want to know about people's experiences of the intervention if we pilot it? Also to get their advice on what avenues we should explore for participant recruitment, and how we can develop materials that will engage participants with our research, and also to ensure the acceptability of our participant surveys and interview schedules. Next slide, please. So far, I just wanted to highlight some of the key lessons that I've learned so far with this project. So first is really considering those kind of tailored and those different approaches to recruiting and working with young men versus young women, so that you can ensure that you've got representation across genders in your co-production work. Also, the importance of icebreakers and rapport building. So I found it really useful to make sure that I had that first meeting with my group that was an opportunity for everyone to get to know each other. And I also think it's really important to be as real and raw as possible about why you're interested in this research area, and to be willing to maybe open up a bit to your co-production group so that they feel encouraged to open up to you. And this also leads to the importance of deciding actually which research team members should be in the room. So if you have a lot of research team members, this might be quite intimidating for the co-production group, but also it might mean that there isn't that psychological safety in the room for you to be as honest and raw about your own experiences. So I think it's really important to think about who you actually need in the room for that co-production work. Also thinking about, is an hour long enough? So far my meetings have all been 90 minutes with my group, and I found that that provides enough time for us to really delve deeper into the things that we want to talk about. And also thinking about ways that you can maintain communication with your group. So we've set up a WhatsApp group, which just helps us to kind of catch up informally and helps everyone to decide when the meeting should be, and to kind of share bits of research or things that you see that maybe you've seen on Twitter and you want to share it with your group. It just kind of opens up the space for that. And finally, the importance of thinking about how you manage group dynamics. So quite similar to a focus group, you might find that some people are more willing to talk about their experiences, whereas some people might be a bit quieter. So firstly, I guess setting out expectations in your first meeting, but also, you know, thinking about how you encourage people to talk a bit more, and how you ensure that the time is kind of split fairly between the different people so that everyone can contribute. I think that's my last slide, so thank you. I'll pass over to the next speaker.
Yeah, I am really pleased to speak to you about my experience working with a group of experts, researchers, on a national study, remission study. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to bore you, because I think previous speakers, they've spoken about what is PPI and the involvement within the research. But on this particular study, which is remission study, it's a National Institute for Health and Care Research funded evaluation research. And this research was co-produced and is a comprehensive qualitative economic evaluation of the NHS low-calorie diet pilot. And the aim is to integrate this with the NHS quantitative analysis as well. I would just briefly mention what did I bring to the study, and what's really my experts being as a PPI. I live with type 2 diabetes, which the participant that will be involved, that were involved in the study, probably they have type 2 diabetes, and that's why they are going through the intervention of low caloric diets. So, and another thing is the diversity, ensuring diversity and making sure that the instruments that were prepared, ensuring one of the aim is to ensure equality and diversity in the program that the future program the NHS will be providing. So as an ethnic minority group, I was able to bring my experience, lived experience with that. And being a first generation immigrant is quite different from generational differences depends, it's actually affect our perception. I used to have history of large, body weight, and which makes me to resonate with the participant as well. And I also am passionate with addressing health inequalities. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. Thank you. So what did I do? What was my involvement with a remission study? I started from the beginning of the research when the ideas were being formulated. So I participated in the funding application, being able to represent minority ethnic group and the participants living with type 2 diabetes. So it's made the application to be robust and making sure that the language is easily that will be easily understandable by the participants who are included in the study instruments as well. And when, in terms of developing protocol, I was part of the team working with the experts, and I will be discussing my experience in the next slide. So the study instruments, diet evaluation, assessment, data collection, all the instruments I was involved in that stage as well. Developing study websites, participant interviews and follow-ups. We were given the opportunity as PPI to be part of the interview, and I think few of us volunteered to do so because I have experience of conducting qualitative, and we were given training to be able to modify our skills in terms of participating and being part of the interview. So also I participated in lay summaries and development of podcasts and blogs. We work with the creative design team as well to be able to develop the patient theme. Also, we were included in developing the publications and dissemination of the results in seminars and presentations I'm doing at the moment as well. So the remission study employed an ongoing collaboration strategy by engaging the PPI throughout the research process. So it wasn't a tick box exercise at all. We were given the full opportunity to be able to develop the study from the scratch up to the end, and even the dissemination of the results. Next slide, please. So my experience in terms of participating as PPI in remission, what I want to highlight, I'll just highlight a couple because of the time, is that we were given the opportunity, like even before we started the study, for openness. For us, no question was time to be silly question. So there was this accommodation. The researchers, they were able to, there wasn't speaking of jargons or maybe medical terms. So even if they have spoken something that we did not understand, we were given the opportunity to clarification. And it was a fulfilling experience for me, being able to give something back and being able to be part of the system that is developing the LCD intervention as well, and making sure that it is including diversity and equality. So it was a fulfilling experience for me. There was effective collaboration. We were able to work with each other amicably. There wasn't any, segregation that, oh, this person is a PPI and the other person is a researcher. So I've mentioned something about trust and respect, effective communication, various means. I just want to emphasize that we shouldn't limit the communication to just during the meeting. there were various means that they were able to communicate with us. So, and because we felt connected, we were not especially because it started during COVID. A majority of the meetings were held on Teams. We felt so connected, despite the fact that majority of the meetings were online. Culturally sensitive, we were able to, because of the diversity that were involved and the equality, their accommodation, to be able to say, oh, this method, I think we need to modify it because we might not be able to recruit as many ethnic diverse in the study. So we were able to adjust the recruitment process and things like that. And the other thing that I think Ken has mentioned is we felt valued. It's not about the value of the money or voucher, but it's because we felt that if the researchers were being, they were valued in terms of valued their time in terms of money. We were being valued as well. So which actually made it to be positive experience for me. Going to the next slide is just going to describe my experience participating in the interview. Because I live with the type 2 diabetes, I was able to resonate with the participant, and I was able to make them to realize that I am passing through the same thing that you are passing through, which gives them sense of relaxation, and they were able to share their lived experience in terms of what they are facing regarding the intervention. So, and some of the participants that they are minority ethnic group, in terms of the social aspect of the LCD, how it impacts their family life and their hospitality sense, they were able to open up, which I think it was a win-win approach for me, because I was able to learn from the participant as well. So I observed that I was useful for the service users and interviewers to have a peer-to-peer relationship. So this provided an avenue as an insider to facilitate service user trust, good rapport, and willingness to share their experience on the NHS LCD program freely. So the other experience, which I think I enjoyed to be part of the interviews, I gave the sense of communality, having someone with the same problem, particularly with ethnic minority individuals. So the other one is it was a good experience in terms of when they are sharing the pictures and they were able to describe their pictures, I was able to resonate with them. And at the end of the interview session, I was able to give additional clarification in terms of questions, and probably that area that the researcher did not explore well, I was able to add that, and we were able to get robust data from the participant, which actually shaped the outcome of the study. So I think that's all from me, and I will pass you on to the next speaker.
Thanks, Abby. That was a really great presentation, and thanks to all the previous speakers. So next slide, please. I'm just going to tell you a bit about the Obesity Voices Hub, which I've referred to previously. It's a national network that we set up. It's got over 260 people who you can access to take part in projects or service delivery projects, which I'll talk about a little bit more at the end. There is a URL there, and there'll be a QR code on the next slide, please. We launched Obesity Voices to give us more people and to give more diversity and a deeper, broader bench. And we've really done a good job of that. We started with about 12 people, and we're now up to over 260. We have started to collect and share good PPI practice and offer training and development to our members. And we've got a real sense of community. Next slide, please. This is our steering committee, and they chose the name for the group as Obesity Voices, and we're really lucky to have such a great group of people. One of the notable features is we've got a majority of members that are living with obesity. I think several of them are on the call today. We've got Susie Burney from ECPO, and we're fortunate to have Councillor Bittle from Leeds City Council. But we've also got members from Obesity UK and the Obesity Empowerment Network, as well as individuals. Next slide, please. Should just mention a really new, hot off the press appointment to that group is our BAME Voices member, Kirsty, and I'm really looking forward to some exciting work. This is the QR code for people who want to be members. It's obviously just been on a few minutes, but I'm not going to go into what is in depth there. I'm sure that we can get Sunit to circulate this to the attendees, and it's on our website, leedsbeckett.ac.uk Obesity Voices. Next slide, please. And this is the companion brochure for professionals who want to use Obesity Voices. We have introduced just recently an administration fee of £40 per request. If that's a problem, you can always contact us on the inquiries, which is in, I think, on page 13 of the booklet. And don't let that be a barrier. And please, if you want any advice, get in touch with us. Next slide, please. I just want to say a couple of things we've done. 50 projects, 160 people have been recruited to those projects. We've got 270 members, and I think we've come a long way in 1 year. So thank you very much. Louisa.
Thanks, Ken, and thank you to all of our speakers. That's been a really, really interesting morning, and I would like to welcome everyone to join our Q&A panel, and I'd particularly like to welcome our lived experience members, Nadia, Kat, Hannah and Abida, and I wonder whether you'd just like to quickly introduce yourself whilst I bring up the questions from our Slido set. So Nadia, would you like to go first?
Hi, yes, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for attending. My name's Nadia Isaac. I am a person living with obesity and also a vocal advocate for people living with obesity. I am fortunate enough to be a trustee of the Obesity Empowerment Network, which has basically enabled me to grow in my confidence to become an active PPIE member, and I applaud everything that the Obesity Voices has done. It really has made me feel more confident working with peers and also PPI members.
Fantastic. Kat, and then Hannah, and then Abida.
Hello, I'm Kat Denver, she, her pronouns. Yeah, I'm a senior project manager at Leeds City Council, and I've been working with Hannah on the LGBTQIA work stream. I'm a queer woman living with obesity, and as I said, a community investigator.
Hi there, I'm Hannah Bithell, councillor on Leeds City Council and obesity champion. She, her pronouns, and I'm also LGBT champion. And if you see children running around in the background, I apologise, I am in fact in soft play. Thank you.
Thanks, Hannah and Abida. Oh, you're on mute, Abida, sorry.
Sorry about that, everyone. I was saying, my name is Abida. I'm an advocate for working with Muslim women in Bradford around looking at supporting them with health inequalities, particularly to do with obesity.
Fantastic, thank you, and thank you again to everyone for joining us, and thank you for putting me. I'm just having a look at the chat, the Q&A, and we've got some really interesting questions. So I'm conscious we've only got 9 minutes left, so what we will do is try and get through as many questions as possible, but any questions we don't get through, we'll try and respond to them through our various different social media streams throughout the day. Also, a quick message from Sunit to say that all of the links and information shared with you today will also be emailed to you all individually, because we're conscious that we haven't been able to share through the chat function today. So I will start off with the first question. So this is to all of our PPIE lived experience members. Why did you take part in the PPIE activity that you've been involved with? I don't know whether anyone would like to start with that question.
I'm happy to start because I'm going to dub Hannah in it, so which will, I think, organically lead. I'm the LGBT staff network chair within Leeds City Council, and so Hannah and I work together with her being LGBT member champion, and she emailed me about being involved in it, so I felt anointed and therefore got involved. But then it ended up actually prompting some really helpful reflections for me about my sort of own lived experience about it, and I had never considered the intersectionality between sort of weight and my own experience. So actually Hannah took me on a journey of learning without realizing it. So whenever I thought about it more, I became really passionate about trying to do some more investigation. So that's why I got involved.
Amazing. Thanks, Kat. Hannah, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, thank you. I think for me, I'm really aware that my experience is different, and my feelings around living with obesity and the way that it impacts my life is very different to sort of the narrative that is quite often portrayed in the media and such like. So for me, it became a really clear intersection with the LGBT plus champion work to get involved with this, and I guess the drive to make sure that people's stories are heard that are more like me, so that can inform research and things like we're doing now is just so important. Thank you.
Real. Anyone else have any other thoughts for that question, or shall we pop on to the next question? We've got quite a few to get through.
Hi, Louisa. I'd like to add a point as well, if I may.
Yes, please do.
So I guess for me, it's about, so my day job is I work for reducing inequalities in Bradford on the core 20+5. And obesity obviously was a feature for not just adult obesity, but child obesity. I think for me, what I've found is services need to be more culturally competent, and for us to be able to have those direct conversations with women. And like Tamara mentioned in her presentation, it is about creating those safe spaces and actually listening to people with those lived experiences. And also dispelling a lot of the myths and stereotypes we might have of certain communities. So I think that's what I found that's been my drive to making sure that I can work with as many organizations as possible to be able to be that light into certain groups and communities which may be, for whatever reason, unable to put their voices around a particular table where those conversations are happening.
Brilliant. Thanks, Abida. There's a quick question at the bottom here for Ken, which is what's next for the Obesity Voices Hub? And to everyone, how can we continue to expand the membership of Obesity Voices across our broad and diverse communities? Ken, do you want to start off on that one?
Yeah, so more recruitment, of course, and targeted recruitment into least heard communities. I think we've got to start looking at that. We've talked about it for a long time, and I think that's our next stage. And I think I mentioned Kirsch during the presentation. He's going to help us with some of that work. But we've also talked about neurodiversity, and we've talked about people living with severe and enduring mental health problems as well. Thank you.
Super, thanks, Ken. Abby.
Thank you, Louisa. I think great thing for me, it's working with the faith leaders and working with social leaders, social group leaders. We make us to be able to have valuable contribution from the ethnic minorities. I think using the terms outreach needs to be dropped. We are there and we are accessible if you really think we can contribute. So, and slow rolling in terms of the people that you've got, you can actually see and get other people through the people that's already on board to increase the membership.
Hear to that, Abby. Oh dear. Thanks, Abby. Hannah.
Thank you. Yeah, just a really quick point around making sure that we are actually providing what our communities need. Actually, it's not always necessarily that institutes and such like and voices groups are not trying to get us, but if we don't think as a community that what you guys are offering is relevant, or what we've got to give is relevant because it all feels so alien, then the uptake is going to be minimized. So actually the work that we're doing at the moment around finding out what is needed in the community can then inform the wider voices work.
Absolutely. We've got to start at the very beginning of the journey together. Completely agree. Nadia.
Hi, yes, I'd just like to opine on that. I actually had a chat with a lovely gentleman on Friday who I'm trying to recruit for a co-applicant research grant. And he is an elderly gentleman of Caribbean descent living with obesity. And he said something to me that really does resonate, is that, you know, standard across the board, he was referred to Slimming World on tier 2, and he felt really marginalized. He didn't feel he belonged. It really wasn't, you know, he felt like a fish out of water. And I think that's so important that we do increase this diverse ways of peer-to-peer support. So I must, you know, say that, you know, moving forward, it's going to be a fantastic opportunity for PPI.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nadia. And we've got a kind of follow-on question. Somebody has asked, if I can find it. Ken, could you provide more details about the payments? You mentioned that guidelines are now in place.
Yes, the NIHR involved rates are £25 an hour. And that should include preparation time and any out-of-pocket expenses. I think that with researchers, we've now finally got that message loud and clear. It's proving more difficult with some organisations in the NHS who have a different set of guidelines, but we are working to try and equalise that. And also with some of the professional bodies that want PPI representation, they haven't quite fully taken on board that message.
Brill, thanks, Ken. And I'm conscious we've only got a couple of minutes left, so we will address the rest of the questions through our social media. But I just wanted to end on one last question, and that is whether you could give some examples of the different roles or tasks that PPIE members undertake. Don't know whether anyone could share. I know Abby's already shared some examples. Abby.
Yeah, I think depending on the study and depending on how prepared the researchers are able to accommodate the PPI, I don't think there's any aspect of research that you cannot involve PPI, because what we up is it has the impact in terms of making your job easier and actually giving you the robust idea that something that you will not think of, you are able to think outside the boxes when you involve PPI.
Thanks, Abby, and I could not agree more. Our PPIE members are part of the research team and we go on the whole journey together as far as I'm concerned. Hannah.
Thank you. I mean, there's others placed far better to talk about specific actual operational roles. However, for me, I think one of the beautiful things that we bring is that contextualization of what we find out in the research. So after we've had a focus group or whatever, we will then be able to add sort of the bread and butter around it to be able to give the context of what people are experiencing. And I think also in meetings, so I was in a meeting the other day and I had just for the first time had somebody sat next to me. I'm on a weight loss journey at the moment. Somebody had sat next to me on a bus, and being able to have that discussion and put that contextualization just in our regular meetings around what it's like to just actively be living with obesity in the community, I think is something that we bring effectively, or I hope we bring effectively. Thanks.
You absolutely do. And that is, I think you've just hit the nail on the head as to why it's so important, Hannah. Nadia.
I'll be very quick. I think one of the things I really enjoy as being part of PPIE is that when you have a discussion with a researcher, I had one on physical activity, and basically you're helping to rewrite all their questions they're going to be asking the participants, because they're not understanding how their questions are coming about. And it's so fulfilling to know that you're the expert and you're rewriting what they're trying to do their research on. And it's just fabulous to be able to know that your voice is heard in a research capacity.
Thanks, Nadia, and that is lovely to hear. I'm conscious we're 2 minutes over, so I will give the last word to Ken, but I just wanted to say thank you all so much. It's been a fantastic hour, and I hope everyone's enjoyed it. So over to you, Ken, for the last word.
So one of the things we've got to do for recruitment is to try and capture some of the things that have just been said about people's experience. And I think people need to know that PPI engagements through Obesity Voices have been from half an hour to a co-applicant on a 5-year grant and everything in between. So it's a broad field. But in doubt, give us a shout.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So a huge thank you. And this recording and all of the information will be available to you later. So thank you very much.